All right, let's do it live on a Tuesday edition of the program. I am merely Bo. The great Gibby is here. The great G-Man is here. The great Dr. J is here. Dr. Z is still on assignment in the Caribbean. God bless.
It looks like they're having nice weather. All I've seen really are meals from the documentarian. I haven't seen anything else.
She's the Ken Burns.
Boy, is she.
She's on it.
And not a bad thing, but normally you get a little bit, there's some excursions, there's some other things.
Yeah. Well, she's with child,
anything.
and so there's that part of it too, where, probably not as adventurous as one would normally be. Yeah. Oh, speaking of Ken Burns, and what a way to start the show. Did you watch Saturday Night Live this week with Shane Gillis?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I did as well. I had a very 20 years ago Saturday weekend, really, because I watched Saturday Night Live with Gillis, and then I watched the Academy Awards, even though I saw none of the movies. But my wife was into it, and I thought Conan was pretty funny, and the presenters were funny. I thought they put on a good show, even though I'd never seen any of the movies. But back to Gillis and back to Ken Burns. So a little more than a year ago, on my Columbus show, this was right after. So Michigan had won the national title, and then Ohio State went to work financially. Quinshon Judkins signed. They went and got Caleb Downs in the portal. They got Julian Sain in the portal. Buckeye fans are going to love him. Seth McLaughlin. It was oh. And for some reason, what clicked in my head as an analogy for what Ohio State was doing was a line from the Ken Burns documentary, The Civil War, which I've seen a couple of times through, and people say, well, who the hell would ever do that? I did.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. So there's a historian in there named Shelby Foote who gives the Southern perspective of a lot of this. And one of the things that he said that got me thinking about what Ohio State was doing, and I turned this into a 15-minute open on my show in Columbus, was he had a line about how the North was never going to lose that war. I think his exact line was the South never really had a chance to win that war. And he said that the Yale boat races were still going on. There was all this marvelous invention, manufacturing that was going on in the North. And if the North ever wanted to, that the North fought that war with one hand tied behind its back. And if the North ever wanted to just annihilate the South, if there were more Southern victories and a lot more, the North could have just taken the other arm out from behind their back. All the men could have enlisted, and they would have overwhelmed the South, was his contention. So I use that as an analogy for Ohio State football. They dealt with Southern dominance. They saw their rivals win the national championship, and they said, fine, we'll get engaged and we'll spend. And Ohio State took the other arm out from behind its back and fought with 2 fists forward. So that was something that I did on the show. I had not heard anybody talk about Shelby Foote ever. Gillis had it in his monologue.
Yeah.
He referenced Shelby Foote in the monologue. I'm sitting there with my wife, and I'm like, he knows who Shelby Foote is? That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So that was such a full circle moment with the fact that he was doing that. Why did we bring up Shane Gillis, though, and Saturday Night Live? Why did I bring that up?
This weekend?
You were talking about the documentary, The Civil War?
No, but I'm trying to remember how we landed on that. How that was a side path I took there. Something with Gillis. I can't remember what it was. Must have been SNL. Yeah, it was SNL, I think. So we had a bit of a throwback weekend.
I mean, you had that. You had a monster day yesterday. The memory recall was stunning.
I did. we had a lot of them we had a lot of it was out there.
Yeah.
Oh, I know where I was getting with this. So last night there was nothing on. There's nothing. There's the things I pay attention to this time of year: Cavaliers, Blue Jackets, Buckeye basketball. I suppose as a Dookie, did you watch a little of Duke Wake last night?
Chanting one more year. I can assure you that's not in the cards. And there's
could.
no amount of NIL money that he's going to take. Come on. He's going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft.
He is, of course. And think of it this way. If you're him, and let's say that he's making $5 million a year at Duke right now playing basketball, which I think is probably pretty close to the number. He also has a New Balance deal.
Sure.
Which compensates him richly. Now, that might be what gets him in the league because New Balance paying him might not want him to continue after wearing Nikes while they're compensating him. So that might be the biggest thing. But let's say the Washington Wizards win the draft lottery. Would you rather play another year at Duke at $5 million or give up the early part of your pro career to the Washington Wizards?
I'd play at Duke.
So would I.
Yeah.
So would I. And I'm a millionaire anyway. Like,
yeah,
pretty good life.
Yeah, he's a multimillionaire by the time he comes out.
Anytime people talk about like the 2026 quarterbacks, and anytime they put Arch Manning in it, I'm always quick to say, what's his hurry? Like, they're on record. They love college football more than anything. He's at Texas. He's not going to be the starting quarterback at Texas for 1 year. He's going to do it for 2. He has the highest valuation of anybody in college athletics in terms of potential that could be made on NIL. He might make $10 million a year playing quarterback at Texas. Why would he? What's his hurry?
Yeah. No,
if he doesn't like the spot he's in.
I just assumed. I'm like, you get that rookie deal done, then you can get the super max and the max, and then you're eligible for the real big paydays in the NBA.
There's no question that's right.
If you live up to the hype.
Yeah, it is. That clock goes quicker for him, but college athletes right now have it really good.
Yeah.
They have it really good, what they can do from a financial standpoint. So no sports last night. So Beamsy had AAU practice. We got home from that. I got dinner done, and it was like 8:20. And my wife and the 2 littles were upstairs, and me and NBC were downstairs. And so he was on his phone. I'm like, dude, give me your phone. Let's find something to watch. Let's watch a movie. He's like, I'm in. So remember, I had done like the action movies, the introduction into the classic action movies. So we have the first one we did was Die Hard, loved it. Then we did Commando, loved it. We did Beverly Hills Cop, loved it. So the 4th one on my fun action movie Mount Rushmore, because while I love like First Blood, Roadhouse is in its own category, but while I love First Blood and certainly in that, like Predator's almost a horror movie at some times.
Correct.
Terminator 2 is a little bit too good of a movie to be like a fun.
I don't know if he's ready for Predator.
I think he's seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he's seen it, but
okay.
I don't. He and I didn't watch it. So I'm like, dude, Under Siege.
Come on.
Yep. Now, before we got to this, I thought, well, maybe I should do something more recent. What about everybody tells me Den of Thieves is good, or like John Wick, like those. So maybe I should try.
Den of Thieves is really good.
Is it? Is that appropriate for a 13-year-old, or as much as the rest?
Yeah, you could totally watch Den of Thieves.
Okay.
I actually went to the theater to watch Den of Thieves 2 that just came out.
Was that good?
It was awesome.
So great. So that might be the modern what I'm looking for, the modern, sibling to these movies. So I go to we actually went to Den of Thieves first. So I'm like, well, let's try this. Den of Thieves is 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I start this, you're talking about 11 o'clock. Like he goes to bed around 10. Like that's long past. So then I landed on Under Siege. Guess how long Under Siege is?
Hour 35.
Of course. Of course it is. Commando's 90 minutes on the dot. 1:30
really?
And you're out. Hour and a half and you're out. Under Siege is like 1:38, something like that. Beverly Hills Cop's like an hour 40. The only one that's over 2 hours is Die Hard. So like they used to be able to get this done in 90 minutes.
Why can't they still?
I don't know. So we pop in Under Siege. And so we're about 20 minutes in.
What is your, yeah.
So I go.
Have you guys seen, do you
have any point of reference on Under Siege?
Neither one.
Oh, my God. How about the other ones I mentioned? Beverly Hills Cop, Commando, Die Hard.
He's good.
Gabe's seen all those?
Yeah.
So we're sitting there, and he goes, I'm like, well, what? Just out of nowhere, he goes, Dad, this is like Die Hard on a boat. And I said, yes!
This is why you're the leader in the will category.
That's it, buddy. You're exactly right. That's exactly what this is. This is 100% Die Hard on a boat. And they basically at that time just did Die Hard was so successful. Anything that we could do like that, let's do it. So if you've seen Under Siege, there is a moment that was a lot further into it than I remembered. I thought it was like in the first 20 minutes, but it's more like an hour in.
Yes.
Where Erica Liniak, who was she was on Baywatch.
Oh.
She was in Playboy magazine. She actually preceded Pamela Anderson on Baywatch, but that was the role she played on Baywatch for the kids out there. They probably don't even know who Pamela Anderson is. So
Shame on both of you.
There is a scene, it's only about 15 or 20 seconds, that if you're of a certain age, was a seminal part of your youth, was this specific scene. And so I feel like it's coming, and I have three choices. I can either sit there and watch it with him. That felt like, I don't know that I want that in a father-son relationship. I can fast forward and deprive him of an incredible moment in my youth, or I can leave the room, go get a glass of water. So I choose option 3.
It's a good option.
I go and get a drink, and I come back down, and he has a smile that could light up the room from here to Bangor, Maine. It is ear to ear. And he goes, all I said to him, we didn't really talk about it. All I said to him was, and now you know why this was one of my favorite movies. And that was it. So we get to the end of it. I'm like, well, what'd you think? Dad, that was awesome. That was awesome. I'm like, you're right. It is. And you forget how great Tommy Lee Jones is in it.
Yep.
You forget that the director of it then directed The Fugitive, and most of the people in The Fugitive are in Under Siege.
Yeah.
There's probably a dozen at least.
Busey's a lunatic.
Busey's unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable. It's peak Seagal before you knew about all the nefarious things that he was doing behind the scenes. So it really checked every box. So that's what we did last night.
It's fantastic.
So good.
And it's 90 minutes.
It's over in 90
minutes. It was bed at a decent
hour. It was bed
hour.
at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Why does everything have to be 2.5 hours? 3 hours.
What started that? Was that Waterworld?
Oh, my God.
I feel like
that was yeah.
There was something.
I don't know.
Maybe Titanic, which I've never seen and never will see.
I mean,
the boat sinks. That's like a 3-hour movie.
It's
like,
3+.
What are we doing?
So, like the last couple of years, Academy Awards, like Oppenheimer was over 3. Yeah, there was. That's kind of now normal.
Yeah.
To do that. Now, again, I haven't seen Den of Thieves, but I have to sure there's 40 minutes that could be cut out. I'm sure there is. I don't know if it was like Braveheart, Gladiator, like those movies that were historical fiction that, I mean, based on a true story, very loosely in the case of Braveheart, because those were longer and made so much money, people thought there was an appetite for it. I don't know. But it used to be those movies, those popcorn movies were an hour and they were 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of those ones.
Plenty of action, on the edge of your seat.
We're off and running.
Yeah.
Like
From
there's
the get-go.
yeah. I forgot that like H.W. Bush is in Under Siege. Barbara Bush, Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
They're in it in the opening scene. It's great. Absolutely great. Yeah. It was a lovely night. Absolutely lovely night. Hot Topics of the Day presented by University Hospitals, official healthcare partner of your Cleveland Browns. The Browns have tendered exclusive rights free agents Winston Reid and Blake Whiteheart. If tendered, exclusive rights free agents may not negotiate or sign an offer sheet with another team. Reid and Whiteheart are both locked in for another year, provided they sign their tenders. Penn State edge Abdul Carter will make his top 30 visit with the Browns this week, per Jordan Schultz. Did he ever comment on the Rappaport stuff?
Rappaport
had fun with it.
He's taken the high road.
Okay. So Rappaport leaned into it. And I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, he's on with McAfee. Like, what are you going to do? But he leaned into it a little bit, and then Schultz did the other. Have we ever had Rappaport on this show?
Yes. He's been in this studio.
Oh, that's right.
Training camp.
There
are times he's been in and been great.
But
there have
that's
been a
right.
few times where he's blown us off.
I do remember him here. I remember him in studio here. Yeah, when they used to do that, where they would take like the whole crew for training camp.
Yep.
Yeah. Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders will make his top 30 visit with the Browns this week, per Mary Kay.
Busy week here in the building.
Yeah. What I got tagged in a bunch of stuff this morning. Maybe you guys can help me with it. That was like Shedeur's going to be a second-round pick.
Oh, we'll get to that.
We have that later.
The mock draft segments later on. But there are people that have Shedeur late first, early second now.
Yeah, and I saw a bunch of stuff about how he interviewed.
Yeah.
Like, didn't Josina have something about that today too? Am I stepping on
G-Man,
something?
No. G-Man said something that, what was the one tweet? That they were, like, teams were bothered because he didn't seem to care what people thought of him. Did I have that right?
All right, so here's the Josina tweet. It's long. She writes, I'm disappointed to hear that a quarterback coach from a team drafting in the top 7 referred to Shedeur Sanders as coming off brash and arrogant in his team interview, making his assessment known to a number of people per source. I'm purposely not naming the team to not directly call the team out. I'm just sharing that this coach's personal assessment is a direct opposite from how Shedeur came across to many reporters in the press conference of the media at the Combine. Sanders appeared to go out of his way to acknowledge multiple media members, regardless if they were recognizable or not. He seemed cordial, polite, witty, thoughtful, along with being confident. Alternatively, these observations were distinctly different from how another quarterback prospect came off to the same media last year in Indy. According to a league source, said quarterback coach seems to have an issue with the culture of athletes who have been broad fame and financial success before entering the NFL, and their opinions appear to be from have a problem with certain athletes. She'll leave it at that. Interesting. But I did see this. I think this part's important. He's literally Deion Sanders' son, despite growing up different from most, seemed fairly grounded. It's funny, like we asked Kevin about it, he thought he was great.
Yeah.
And everything that I had heard about, I mean, we even asked Albright about it, and he's out there, and he said, look, he's Deion's kid, and he's a millionaire, but, like, he's not a problem. So I don't know where this all came from, and she seems to have kind of cornered where it came from.
It's pretty crazy. All of a sudden, there's some kind of free fall this week in a few of these mock drafts. And a few of these, our own Dane Brugler. Not to spoil it, but Brugler's got him in a little bit of a free fall.
Yeah, this goes. You remember before that we got to the Combine, how I talked about groupthink? So you start the Combine, and let's just lay this out appropriately. You ask anybody, and they will say 90% of how you identify a prospect is the tape. 80-90% of how you look at it. And then the last 10% is interviews, medical, testing, that stuff. That's the last 10%. But 90% of it's tape.
Yeah, Glenn Cook said that yesterday on our show.
Tape is yeah, right, exactly, in his conversation with Z. Okay, so by that evaluation, there was not a mock draft or an evaluation of Shedeur Sanders that had him dropping below 6. Not one. And the lowest anybody had him ranked was like in the teens. Okay, so now we go to Indy. And now,
and by the way, he doesn't put anything on.
Doesn't do anything.
He doesn't do anything except meet with teams. So you're telling me that 10% was enough to drop him into the 20s or even into the second round? Come on.
This is the thing you got to remember. Anybody who's doing a mock draft at this point is for clicks.
Oh, Zagur and I are going to be doing them later on.
It's for clicks.
100%.
It's for clicks. That's why you're doing it. So he is the most polarizing, not because of what he is or what he is as a player or any of it, because he's the most known. He's Deion Sanders' kid.
Yeah.
So it's low-hanging fruit. It's low-hanging fruit. It's easy. In a way, sometimes it's lazy to just do that because it's the easiest thing to get you clicks is to go at him. Johnny had this quality. Bake had a little bit of this quality. In last year's draft, Caleb was pretty much unfettered. Nobody came at him too much. I think most people just viewed him as such a great prospect that there wasn't much in pushback of him. Kyler had this. There was big pushback with that. There wasn't any pushback on Burrow.
There.
Nothing on Burrow that I recall.
Remember Kyler's interview with Dan Patrick?
Oh, yeah. I do.
Guess what? He still went number 1.
He went number 1 overall, baby.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is at this point, this is utter nonsense. And I love both you and Z. A mock draft from you guys right now. What do you
Correct.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
There's so many things before free agency, but it's clickable. People want to see it. They want to know where people are going to be or where you think people are going to be, and so you do it, and it's fine. But I think that's what's going on with Shedeur more than anything else. There's no way that he did anything at the Combine that would take him from being the 2nd overall pick or the 6th overall pick at worst to not drafted in the first round.
Even if he bombs his pro day workout.
Which he won't.
Which, by the way, is set up for you to succeed.
Yeah.
In every way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to, even if he bombs that, he might get picked 10th or 12th. And even then, I think if he's still there at pick 8, someone's coming up to grab him. Or after number 6, someone's coming up to snag him.
If he gets through Jets, who are at 7, I think.
Yeah.
Jets are at 7.
Which, by the way, just a few moments ago, the Jets making news. They are releasing Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I said
find
yesterday
a trade
with
partner.
Tyvus. Yeah. Yeah, so he'll go wherever Aaron goes, and that's the way that maybe that'll be the Giants is how that'll finally shake out. I think we saw this on it to a lesser degree with Will Howard, and we didn't talk about this much yesterday. I think maybe Tyvus and I had a chance to talk about this very, very briefly. He had a really bad throwing session at the Combine.
Sure.
I do think that we are to the point where almost nothing at the quarterback position, almost nothing good can come from the Combine. Because if it looks great, then, well, it should look great. You're going to try to make it to the league. How do you define what looks great? And he didn't look good. I think what happened with him was you get rabbit ears a little bit, and you hear people saying that you don't have a strong enough arm to drive the ball, right? And you hear that over and over and over again. It's actually interesting. McAfee presented it as like an attribute, but when he told the story of Will on Thursday night, like throwing it in a parking lot, like he said, I thought he said over a building in a parking garage. Like he was trying to throw it. He was throwing it over the building to somebody else. Like how hard he was working. I thought, oh, he's in his own head a little bit. And so when Tyvus sent me that text that showed like how he struggled, I think I viewed it as this is a guy who's gripping it too tight. He was trying to prove how strong his arm is. He's trying to prove that he could drive the ball everywhere, and he just overcooked it because most of his throws were overthrows. He did airmail one behind a receiver really high and hard. I think he was trying to show that he could throw with velocity. And I think you see that stuff and it gets in your head.
You didn't have to throw.
No.
You could have said, hey, I played into late January.
Yeah.
You know, we're taking a little time off. I'll throw up my pro day. Because your stock has never been higher at that point.
No.
And instead, you threw at the Combine, and all it did was hurt you.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that's where we're at with some of these guys now.
I think we're almost the point where I do wonder if, especially at quarterback and some of the skill position stuff, if you're going to have to financially incentivize these guys to do the on-field stuff. If the Combine becomes something for borderline guys. And that's kind of it.
Sure.
Because these guys now, and this might be kind of the genesis of where this conversation Josina is referring to from the quarterback coach around the league. These guys are multimillionaires coming in. You know?
Well, and you would think look at Sanders and Ward. I mean, you're going in, we're not going to work out. We're going to go through the medicals, and we're going to have meetings with everybody. Well, if the meetings are going to hurt me because one coach thinks I'm some kind of I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Well, then why do I even need to do any of this?
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah. And by the way, if I'm still going to be in your building for one of 30 interviews that they have later on, how many times do I have to meet with you people?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what's out there. Watch the tape.
It's all there. I'm coming to your building. So I think guys at the top of the draft will do less and less and less.
Yeah.
That's kind of my hunch on how that all shakes out. Did you see this? The Stadium Series game was down in Columbus this weekend. It was on the NHL side of this between the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings. The NHL took advantage of the Four Nations momentum where they had about 10 million people watch that. And this one averaged 1.6 million. It peaked at 1.8 million viewers for what it is just a regular season hockey game. And it was a spectacle that was incredible. It was basically tailgated like an Ohio State football game.
Absolutely.
By
I had
everybody
friends
I've
that went
talked to.
and did that.
Yeah, it was kind of tailgated in that way. That is the most people who have ever seen the Columbus Blue Jackets play on television, I promise you. Because other than that, they had they had a series win against Toronto in the bubble playoff, and then they had a series sweep at Tampa Bay. That's it. That's the list. So 1.8 million. It's a monster. Highest cable hockey rated game since 2019, I thought I saw. Something like that. So that was good. The NHL is having a moment right now for sure, and we'll see if they can capitalize. Not get lost. You can't get lost in March Madness. That's the challenge.
And yet, not to take anything away from the NHL, because it's been a fun month involving the NHL. 1.8. I mean, they fell so far back that 1.8 is a big deal.
Yes. Yeah, they did. It's a huge deal for them. It goes to kind of that conversation we've had here a little bit, and I have it a lot more in the morning, but it is the NFL, it is college football, like those are the constants. And then Major League Baseball, NBA would be ahead, but they're all receding ratings. And then the NHL is trying to get some sort of positive momentum. But yeah, like some of their regular season games, 200,000 or 300,000 people are watching. I mean, it's less than are watching UFL.
Yeah.
We have too many things. Here's the other part of this. So tonight, Ohio State basketball plays. It's their senior. It's a big game for them. It's a senior day game. Do you know when it tips? It's in Columbus.
Is it a 9:00 tip?
9:00
Against who?
Nebraska. Do you know what it's on exclusively? Peacock. So it is a must-win game. It's their senior day game, and it's being played at 9:00 on Peacock. So this is the other part that these are all fighting. In college basketball, all of them are fighting it. It's like you've taken this money, you're kind of at the mercy of the television providers, and we have so many options for our entertainment eye. You know, the reason that you and I love the movies we watch is because they were on all the time.
Yeah.
Under Siege was on 6 times a month, and you had 6 channels. So, or you bought the VHS.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on. Let's watch Under Siege again.
Oh, I was just cleaning out some of my parents' stuff this weekend. We had to move them. Like, there's a bunch of VHSs. Like, they just pop in a VHS and hit record and record the movie off of TV.
We used to do that all the time.
Yeah. There's stacks. I'm like, what am I doing with all these?
My aunt had HBO. We didn't. She would record 3-hour or 3 movie tranches on VHS.
Yeah.
So you would get, like, we had one that was like a Western one that HBO must have been running a bunch of Westerns. It was Young Guns, Silverado, Man from Snowy River, like all 3 of those on one VHS. And you would just watch them over and over again. Now, let alone the phones, there's a billion things that take our attention, which I think it's just such a credit the NFL has maintained, and college football maintained and grown interest, and people still watch it and watch it more than ever, while everything else is receded. It's really pretty wild. But 1.8 for them, or 1.6 on an average, that's a win. This is a win for you. Coming up next, Z's going to sit down with ESPN draft analyst Jordan Reid. We're off and running. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Now here is Z sitting down with ESPN draft analyst Jordan Reid.
So happy to be joined by a rising star in the business. We can say we remember him way back when. Yeah. He is now ESPN's NFL draft analyst, Jordan Reid. And Jordan, it is great to see you here. You're suited up. You're ready. It's the combine. It's draft season. And for the Browns, we haven't had a first-round pick in 3 years. Not a great season, but we're picking second. And so an opportunity to maybe have a franchise-changing draft. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, first and foremost, welcome back.
Yeah, man, it's good. Yeah, it's good to be back with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. Exciting times for the Browns. Having a number 2 overall pick, there's a lot of different directions that they could go.
Are there?
Yeah, there's a lot of different directions that they can go, but the one I think they have to take a quarterback. Whenever you're in position to select a quarterback, I believe you should do so. And nothing matters in a roster rebuild or roster construction until you get that spot solidified.
Have you been watching our show? These are some of our talking points. I love this.
Great
this
minds
is fantastic.
think alike.
Exactly. So I'm with you. So I think that you have an opportunity. You've been thrown in some ways a life raft by some of the decisions other teams have made at the end of the season, and the Browns all of a sudden kind of just, here we are at number 2. You and I were talking before, and we'll talk about it now, but there is we'll call it, in quotes, a consensus that there are 2 quarterbacks in this draft that are worthy of being taken at the top. And now some people may say, I like him at 10. Hey, look, if you like quarterback at 10, you like him at 2, because that seems to be the deal with that position. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. Let's start with kind of how do you see those 2, and if you were a general manager of a team like the Cleveland Browns, would you be comfortable saying, all right, at 2, I know I can get one of those guys, or do you like one so much better that you'd be like, I got to figure out a way to get up to 1? Because I don't know if you remember this, 2016.
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns picking 2nd, Tennessee Titans picking 1st. Mm-hmm. Browns love Jared Goff. Rams trade up, and now Browns trade out. And after a bunch of different trades, you end up with Corey Coleman and not Jared Goff. So let's start there. 2 quarterbacks, would you be comfortable with either of them at 2?
Yeah, I would. And as far as how they got here, is very similar, but stylistically they couldn't be any different in my opinion. So just comparing their how they got here moments, 2 quarterbacks that started in the FCS ranks, Cam Ward at Incarnate Word, then Shedeur Sanders obviously at Jackson State. He goes on to Colorado. Cam ends up going to Washington State and then to Miami. So their how they got here moments are very similar from a school standpoint, but stylistically these 2 guys couldn't be any different in my opinion. Shedeur is more so of your prototypical pocket passer. You're just absolute sniper from inside of the pocket, predicated on ball placement, his vision. But the thing that stands out to me the most is his toughness. I don't think there's a tougher quarterback in this draft class just because some of the hits that he took absolute beatings, not only this season but also last season, even though he surrendered the most sacks over the past 2 seasons, but he still was able to get up and be productive after all of those beatings that he did take. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Cam Ward.
Let me jump. Let's just
absolutely.
talk Shedeur for a second.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So now he's tough. Not only that, many times when he got sacked, he'd make at least one guy miss, but it was in many cases it was a full-on just jailbreak right to the quarterback. And the second point to buttress that is how many of his big-time downfield throws did he get absolutely crushed on, and he knew it, and he would stand in the pocket, deliver it, and take a big hit.
Yeah, a lot of those he did. You can go through pretty much any game that he played last year, and he took a severe amount of hits. But once again, he kept coming back, and he kept firing. And that's what you love to see from a quarterback, just because even though the hits won't be as frequent, you're hoping anyway that he took at Colorado, the mental toughness that it takes not only to keep coming back, but also to bounce back and continue to be productive throughout games. That's something that you love about Shedeur.
So I like that. So pocket passer, sniper. In my mind, you're saying, if he maximizes everything, right, the style in which you play, I'm not saying he is going to be that guy, but the style in which he would play would be similar to the way that a Drew Brees would dissect a defense.
Yeah, I think they're very similar as far as how they win and how they play the game. Guys that are predicated on, anticipatory throws, winning from the pocket, being able to occasionally make plays out of structure and throw some balls down the field, even though that's not really their wheelhouse. But just the vision, understanding the concepts, and then just being able to execute those concepts.
And then on the other side, we've got a guy who maybe is more stylistically kind of like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen in terms of thrives out of structure, chunk play machine, early Patrick Mahomes, I would say, and loves to kind of really push the ball down the field. Brett Favre, a gunslinger.
Yeah, and what I love the most about Cam is just he's kept that underdog mentality everywhere that he's been. And just reflecting back on his story, we're talking about a kid that was severely under-recruited during his time coming out of high school, played in a wing T offense. So there were times where he didn't even throw the ball up to 10 times a game just because you want to run the ball down the throats of everybody in that wing T offense. Goes to Incarnate Word, absolutely lights it up in the FCS ranks, transitions to Washington State, does the same thing, and then at Miami, arguably the best quarterback in program history. So with him, it's just the underdog mentality and then just the confidence that he plays with. He plays with the poise, that calm, cool, collected demeanor. And you mentioned it a couple of seconds ago. And, not comparing him to these guys like Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, but the uncanny ability to make offensive coordinators right, even if they have the play wrong, is something that Cam Ward really thrives in. And also something else that I think he has to really improve on the next level. I love using analogies when I'm talking about quarterbacks. So Cam Ward is that guy that's kind of instructed to jump off the 10 or 15-foot high dive, but there's a lot of times where he gets curious and he wants to jump off that 25 or 30-foot high dive just to see if he's able to do it. So understanding that, don't pass up the first option in this progression just because you have a huge appetite for those down the field or those highlight reel plays.
Well, I was going to say, he kind of reminds me of, when you think about how the NBA games evolved we'll call it since Steph Curry came into the league, right? Guys like Mahomes or Lamar or Josh Allen, they have kind of made normal what would be in a basketball analogy, kind of the coaches like the no. Yeah.
Good job.
The no threes, and then it's like, oh, yeah, okay, good shot. With Cam, when I watched him, was he would be like, boring.
Yeah.
Let me make big plays. But in the NFL, you've got to take those.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of he has to be paired with a demanding position coach and an offensive coordinator that's going to drill in his head like, hey, man, let's just take the first option on the progression. Let's not try to satisfy our appetite of those down-the-field plays. Let's just take the death by 1,000 paper cuts.
But
Let's
they'll
just take
come.
the death by 1,000 paper cuts theory of eventually we're going to matriculate the ball down the field. But also, I will say, I don't think it's necessarily coaching it out of him. I think you have to be able to straddle the line of allowing him to be him.
Yeah, what makes him
But
great.
also saying, hey, man, we got to rein it in a little bit just because you're getting a little bit too reckless with the ball. So just allowing him to be him, but understanding when to rein him in at times too.
And I do think a lot of coaches would say, okay, so maybe on a couple of 3rd and 8s a game, you miss the 9-yard completion because you're going for a big one. But if you hit 3 or 4 40-plussers in a game, we're going to win.
Yeah.
That's the league. And that was in my notes. I kept writing, chunk play machine. He's just a chunk play machine. And then on the other hand, we talked about Shedeur and, so many questions about his arm strength. You were joking about it beforehand, but I don't know. I felt like I watched him make enough kind of far hash, deep out throws into tight windows that I was pretty satisfied. I saw him make all the throws. Is he going to sit there and flick it 70 yards? No, but what was it, the Baylor game to get into overtime? He's running dead left, needs it to get in the end zone, and throws kind of a laser 50 yards in the air. How many throws are more than 50 yards in the air in the NFL? Not many.
Yeah, it was that game and then the UCF game. He had a post route down the middle of the field that was about 55 yards in the air. So I think his arm strength is completely fine. The drive velocity does need to get a little bit better. I will say that. But over time, we've seen guys' arm strength get better once he gets in an NFL strength and conditioning program and then once his body matures as well.
All right, so you're telling Browns fans, look, if the Browns take runs, we haven't really seen it, other than the Georgia game. And then last year, it felt like to me, it was Caleb Williams and then everybody else. And nobody was like, oh, no, Jane Daniels going to turn your franchise around and have maybe the best rookie season ever. So you're being in those groups with those guys, you don't know. But, I mean, right now the Falcons are very happy they took Penix. The Broncos are thrilled they took Bo Nix. And last year at the Combine, Bo Nix was not talked about going in the top 12.
Not at all.
So I think sometimes those comparisons year to year are hard because you have the benefit of hindsight that changes how people feel about Daniels and even Drake May, who I thought had a nice rookie year. If you have an opportunity, though, you're saying get him. Cam Ward. You'd love to have Cam Ward or Shedeur.
There's always a sense of hope when you have a young quarterback.
Of course.
And that's all you can ask for in Cleveland right now. And, let's say that they take Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward and they win, 5 or 6 games next year. You have a leg to stand on and say, hey, give us some time. Let's develop this young quarterback. But if you take the defensive piece, you win 3 games next year, now you're gone and you're out of a job. So I just think they have to select the quarterback just because you can develop that guy and then bring it in. I think there's a cluster of receivers after Tedoroa McMillan the receiver out of Arizona.
I love him. I would love to have him.
He's a good player. I think he's already going to be on the jet, headed towards the team that drafted him.
Yes,
by the time
most definitely. Yeah.
In the second round. But you're looking at guys potentially like Luther Burden III out of Missouri. Emeka Ibuka is another option.
Okay.
Matthew Golden out of Ohio State could be another option too. So those three guys definitely could be in play. But tight end definitely is another. If you're looking just for some move guys, Elijah Arroyo.
I liked him when I watched Cam Ward. I was like, who the heck is that guy?
Yeah, Mason
I
Taylor.
like him.
Jason Taylor's son out of LSU is another good player too. So this tight end class has a lot of high-end players, and the depth of this wide receiver class is more so in day 2.
All right, give me a couple running backs that you think, we heard Browns general manager Andy Berry say that Nick Chubb will be testing free agency this year, and he's been so huge. The 4 years that he had there were as good as any 4-year stretch, certainly in probably Browns history outside of the great Jim Brown. When you look at, what we like to do, that wide zone scheme, who are some of the backs that you think could be, difference makers or guys that are just straight up weapons and would help you out in the pass game as well?
Well, the first thing I will say is that this class is absolutely loaded at
Yeah.
running back. It's very reminiscent to, and the star power isn't as great at the top, but it's very reminiscent to what we saw in 2017, and that was the Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara class. But
Not bad.
This class, not bad at all. This class is very reminiscent of that. So we had 30 running backs drafted that year. I think we could exceed that number this year as far as how many running backs could get drafted in this year's class. But just looking at some wide zone guys, one that immediately comes to mind is Devin Neal out of Kansas. He's one that is very reminiscent of Kareem Hunt when he was coming out of Toledo, and we saw how productive of a player he was when the Browns drafted him a few years ago. Bashaw Tootin, who's a Virginia Tech running back. He originally started his career at North Carolina A&T and was – see, I'm smiling over there when I said North Carolina A&T. He originally started his career there and then came over to Virginia Tech and is very productive as well. And then another who I think is really scheme versatile is Damian Martinez out of Miami, another player I'm sure you've seen shine when you were studying Cam Ward.
All right, I got to ask this for the great Gibbe here. It's
we
not
go.
often that Bowling
Here we
Green
go.
has a guy that people are
Harold
excited
Fannin,
about.
baby.
Yeah.
Harold Fannin.
So what do you think about Harold Fannin?
Yeah, I like him. He's super productive. I thought he should have won the Mackey Award over Tyler Warren.
Where do you
go
like
to my
him?
grave saying that.
Early third?
Yeah, I think he'll probably go. I would say that third round range, early fourth round. It all depends on how he tests. I don't think he's going to be an overly good tester just because he's not a great mover or a really great athlete.
He's a unique mover.
But he's one of those guys that's just a gamer. You roll the balls out at gym class, he's going to be the best athlete just because he's so natural as far as pass catching.
Yeah.
And then from a
what was it,
route
Penn
running,
State and then and Texas A&M? Were those the two?
Yeah.
And he was running away from those guys.
super productive in both games. They tried to game plan to double team him and stop him, and they couldn't do it. So he's one of those guys that's not going to be an overly good tester, but that's just a gamer.
He's just a football player.
Yeah, just a football player.
All right, Jordan, we appreciate the time. Thanks for laying it out in a variety of ways for the good folks here. You can catch him on ESPN. He's their NFL draft expert, Jordan Reid. Thanks so much, brother.
All right, there you go. Z and Jordan Reid of ESPN joining us there with that conversation at the top of the draft. All right, coming up next, we will go around the league. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily. We're brought to you by Ballybet, official sports betting partner, your Cleveland Browns, on 850 ESPN Cleveland. next domino.
Yeah.
This is it. This
I
is
mean,
what we're waiting on.
I would assume he's the number one quarterback free agent right now.
He's it. I mean, he's the one for sure, but I don't know. You know, Tyvus was on with us yesterday, and he said that, you know, like the way that he was at the end of the year, I think gives some teams a little bit of pause with him.
Yeah.
I don't know what the market is. I don't know who's – like if you are – I mean, obviously we can't be in this world because the cap space isn't there for somebody like him. But in terms of the players, the teams that could be in the conversation for him, you're talking about, God Lord, a return to the Jets. You're talking about Vegas. I'm just doing AFC first. You're talking about the G-Men. You're talking about, obviously, returning to the Vikes. Nobody in the South, nobody in the West, and probably Pittsburgh. So, Jets, Vegas, Giants, Vikes, Steelers. Those are kind of
It's not like you have unlimited options.
No. You know, obviously Pittsburgh I would think would be the one that would be the most appealing based on the stability of the franchise and the weapons and kind of everything at their disposal there. The defense, I mean, kind of you don't have to really be great in order to be a contender. Minnesota's where you'd want to be. You'd want to stay there, play in the Dome. They just won 13 games. Throw to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and away we go.
You don't know what McCarthy is going to be like.
Mm-mm. No, and so is it a situation where Minnesota does – I'm guessing Minnesota wants to see what the market is, and then hopefully he will come back to them and allow for them to match it. But that market would be Vegas, Jets, Giants, and maybe Steelers.
Yeah.
That's kind of the market.
And
I don't think he'd want to go back to
that
the
they're
Jets.
okay with him letting him seek out. You know, Kevin O'Connell said it last week in his press conference at the Combine. He said, you know, Sam Darnold's earned the right to test the free agent market in a positive way. And they still have Danny Dimes.
Yeah, that's right. They do.
I mean, they can make an offer, and Danny Dimes can be the mentor to J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, and he could be the stopgap until McCarthy gets all the way well if they're still waiting on that too. So the Vikings hold a lot of cards there. I'm curious what this market looks like for Darnold in the next week. Like if this starts to heat up a little bit on his side of things, but no franchise tag for him. Schefter also reporting this. I can hardly read these without laughing. The Jets have given Alan Lazard permission to seek a trade. No kidding. I bet you have. And just like Devontae Adams, who they released today, that's how that's going to go. He's going to get released, and then
if you can't get a draft pick for Devontae Adams, which, by the way, how much money did they save? $29.9 million by cutting him because they had no guaranteed money left.
Yeah,
you're going to make that cut. That's an easy one.
There's no trade on that for there's no trade for Lazard either.
No
it.
Franchise tag for
Osa Odigizua.
What do you got?
Odigizua?
Give it to me, Kev. What'd you say?
Odigizua.
That's what it is.
It's kind of like I don't know if you guys are like this. I'll be fine admitting this. I could not. I was terrified to say Giannis's Antetokounmpo. I was terrified to say that.
Yeah.
So for the longest time when he was first starting to burst on the scene, I would just say Greek Freak. Everybody did.
Yeah.
And then once you heard somebody say it, then you have to hear it. I do anyway. I can't. I'm not good at just looking at it and trying to sound it out phonetically. If I hear it once, then I'll remember it. He got a 4-year, $80 million deal over $50 million guaranteed.
To follow up on that, the Cowboys are doing something here because they just restructured 5 minutes ago the contract of Pro Bowl wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, creating $20 million of salary cap space. Are they going after someone? Are they doing this because they don't have enough money to pay just the average guys?
They still have to pay Parsons, right? He wants a new deal, and he wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback.
You can make that argument, and he deserves that.
Yeah, him or Jamar Chase. So that's kind of where you sit on that. So it could be they could be trying to find a way to shake all these things out. The Steelers are leaning towards Justin Fields being their starter in 2025 per Ian Rappaport. Yes, it seems like Russ is going to go somewhere else. I saw him at the Oscars with his lovely bride. I do think what I'm curious about is why Pittsburgh didn't just stick with him last year.
Agreed.
Why, if they make the move to Russ, it paid immediate dividends, and then it kind of flailed down the stretch. Why didn't they just stick with Fields the whole way? And maybe they thought there was more to Russ than there is. I don't know. They obviously told Justin, hey, don't do anything negative. And that's the way he played. And what did he go, 4-1 when he was the starter? 3-1, 4-1?
So if Russ hits the market, is Russ the number one quarterback free agent over Darnold?
No, I think it's Darnold for sure. And then Russ is, I think, there with Rodgers.
Yeah.
Is probably how that goes. That'd be my guess, that it would go that way. Yeah. But that's where that stands. I also saw they were leaning towards the running back not being back. The kid they drafted out of Alabama.
Najee Harris.
Yeah,
yes.
that Najee would not be returning to Pittsburgh as well. So a little bit of news out of the Steel City. In addition to Darius Slay, they also released, this being the Eagles, cornerback James Bradbury at the start of the new league year as well. So this is where we're at. We're at cut season to try to free up some cap space and get rid of non-guaranteed contracts so you can be a little bit nimble in free agency. Speaking of that, the Texans will allow Stephon Diggs to test free agency while a reunion is possible if the price is right, per Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle. So Diggs could be in free agency as well.
But again, like the biggest free agent to be was T. Higgins.
Yes.
Now there is a lot of news today coming out that the Bengals may just be doing this to sign him and trade him.
Yeah.
So that's worth watching. But Stephon Diggs. Is this going to be team number 4 in 5 years? Something like that?
Minnesota, Buffalo, Houston. So he's been on 3?
3, 4? Okay. And at what point are the injuries starting to catch up? So what's the value on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. I mean, I wonder if there's an interest for him, like landing in Dallas on like a bargain basement to play with his brother.
Yeah.
Maybe there could be something there. I don't know. And finally, North Carolina reportedly will no longer participate in the offseason edition of Hard Knocks after the deal fell through, according to Jonathan Jones of CBS. So I read into this. Belichick didn't want to give him access to the meetings. What are we doing?
Well, that's
the whole point, man.
Yeah. G-Man told me this, and I said, well, this is Bill realizing he was going to have to show everything and doesn't want to show anything.
Of course.
Yeah, we're back to Bill being Bill.
Yeah,
the smile's going to disappear here in a few weeks. Spring ball's going to start.
No way, man. No way. No, he doesn't want that at all. Yeah.